All right, so there's no great way to do this. Just know that you reuse all the factory wiring and you don't have to cut anything. So probably the best idea is to just start sliding things through these wiring holes and getting it all into the center here. And then start connecting what you can, and whatever you can't will probably connect to the dash, right? So the challenge is just gonna be getting everything in there, getting it all reconnected. At least it's all labeled, or ideally you labeled it. And the headlights themselves are actually run right off of a quick connector that's already connected to that toggle on the dash. So let's just see if we can get everything in there. So you can maybe see on the tower here, there's a bunch of little holes on the side. Those are used to run zip ties through so that you can tie things down and make sure that it's not going to vibrate or wear itself off on the aluminum. Last thing to remember is you do have this little chassis ground, which I think is for the kill switch. So you got to run that across. When I run the accessories, what I'll do is give that its own, kind of tap it into the main chassis ground that drives the accessories here too. But for right now, I'm just going to try to get everything together, make sure it runs. I am definitely regretting using the big blue tape to label these versus using some little small labels, because that would have been way easier. Okay, here's turn signal indicator light, and this has to be grounded still. So I'm just gonna stick that off to the side for now. We'll plug in smart LED flasher. Wow, what a pain in the ass. All right, guys, it's been a solid 45 to 50 minutes of just messing around with these wires, and I'm still not sure that they're in the best place, but I think I need this extra wire from the bottom of the dash, the factory dash, to be able to finish this up and actually do something. So I'm gonna try to connect a bunch of these up and allow this thing to hang down and then get these situated even more. It is not super fun in there, honestly. It's kind of a mess. So just, be aware of that this is what's gonna happen if you take on this project. So the dash is on, there's the wiring, I'm just getting everything kind of in here for right now. I'm gonna pull this apart and do final wiring, but what I wanted to do is get the screen mounted and get everything tightened down, and then I'll do final cleanup of the wiring. But you can see it's definitely funky. Like, I definitely want to reroute this guy up to the top here, and this is the turn signal indicator and the LED flasher that needs to be mounted to one of these holes here somewhere. You can see where the USB port's gonna go. I think what I might end up doing is, zip tying these two together and then kind of like taping them up or something, because I can't really see how this one goes inside there. Honestly, it needs its whole extension like that. So, I don't know, it's kind of difficult. Also, I'm realizing that I'm probably gonna bring out my steering stops a little bit to compensate and decrease any crushing potential there is on any of these wires. I was starting to lose steam when I put in the dash in here, and with all the wiring, as you can see, is still a mess. So what I'm gonna do is just get the thing mounted and located and everything tightened down and Loctited and all like that. And so I know that at least it's like solid to the bike, and that includes getting the screen on. So let's get the screen on, get this thing located where it's going to be, and then I can kind of work through all the loose ends of all the little wires and that sort of thing. And from this point forward with the screen, there are a lot of places where you have to use nylon washers. It's not super clear from the instructions exactly where those are, so I've just been looking at the pictures on the website and trying to pick out which bolts have washers on them and all like that. But the first things first is we're going to put the mounts on the front of the tower that catch the lower front mounts of the screen, and then we'll slide the screen up through here, and then eventually we'll be able to lock this cross member down. So let's go ahead and do that. So, as you can see, the screen is now on. What this allows me to do is know what the position of this little cross member is going to be to match these bolts that have to hold the screen. So now what I can do is tighten these two, lock this little cross member in place, and then pull the screen back off, pull one side of this, Loctite it, tighten it back in, pull the other side, Loctite it, and then just start working my way down the whole tower and pulling one side at a time, putting the Loctite on it and tightening everything up. And let's get this tower stabilized, right? Everything in the tower is now tightened down, torqued, and has Loctite on it. So I'm definitely gonna pull these steering stops out a fair amount so that this thing can't bump up against the tower, because right now it can just kind of crush everything up against the tower, and I don't want that. The last thing is also going to be putting this regulator rectifier back on this left side here. Okay, the regulator rectifier is in. It's all zip tied to the tower, and I've got it tucked as best I can. There's not really too great of a place to pull it in anymore right here, but then it's zip tied there. And then everything comes down here and is nice and clean. And as you can see, it would be really nice if I had done the joins and soldered down here versus up there, because this is a little janky looking. So, but I don't know, I'm gonna rewrap this whole thing anyway, so it'll be black again, and I guess it won't really matter. All right, so I'm at day 3 of getting this install in place, not full time obviously, but I started to realize how to tackle the wires on the outside. I was actually a little bit overwhelmed at first, but once I realized that if I just started kind of cleaning up the wires on the outside here, it'll start to delegate what has to go where. So I started wrapping the wires with like a heavy duty electrical tape and then zip tying them, and I realized that some of the, like this turn signal wire, for instance, has to get moved up to this top circle, but I feel way more confident and I'm super excited. I feel like I know how to get this done now, which is just the vast majority of the wires on both sides are going in through the top holes. I'm gonna leave this one wire, which is one of the smaller wires on the right-hand side, going in through the bottom hole, and I'm also gonna send in my auxiliary power and my ground, my chassis ground, actually for all of the parts and accessories up here. So my advice, I had like one of those like, you know, moments, that like aha moment, like, oh boy, if I start at the handlebars and work my way down and just clean up everything as best I possibly can to make it so that the forks can turn as best they possibly can, which I will lose a little bit of turning on. If I turn to the right-hand side, I will not make it to the stopper no matter what, because of the regulator rectifier wires, or just voltage regulator wires. They are too thick because of my stupid choice with cutting the wires closer to the regulator itself. So, you know, start at the handlebars, work your way in, package everything up, and then once everything's all packaged up, you can try your best to cross some zip ties on some of the mounts in there, on some of the cross members, to try to get these things to almost be floating in the circle so that they're not rubbing all the time. We've got a 30 amp relay that will be triggered by the rear tail light. And you can see that there's a fused positive going into the relay that's also splicing this hot red here. This hot red line is going to go to the USB port / voltmeter so that I can turn that on even if the bike's not on. Whereas the yellow is going to go to like the other two accessory switches, which right now will be the GPS, and then the future will also be heated grips. And as you can see, I shrink wrapped the entirety of the line that goes past the frame there so that it'll be wear resistant and look factory. This is just going to tuck right up behind here. I'm going to put a little couple holes in that plastic and zip tie this guy in, and then I'm going to find some place to tuck the relay back in here and zip tie or screw or whatever. So yeah, all I got to do is run a ground from here, a very small ground, and then the trigger line, which will come off the rear tail light. So a couple more wires and our power system will be done. Well, and then I got to run the ground off of this chassis ground here, run that up under here as well, and then we'll run these into the tower with the chassis ground, and then we've got power in there. One other thing I wanted to note is that I'm using heat shrink connectors here that I'll hit at the very end to try to keep any moisture out of this whole area and this area. Everything, any of these types of kind of, lower grade connectors versus soldering, I'm using the heat shrink ones that, gives us the best chance to keep any moisture out. So fingers crossed that that'll help the longevity of all this. All right, the relay is in place. It's kind of hard to see here, and it's a little bit low in the air box for my liking, right, because of water level. Granted, it's only a couple inches lower than this other relay right here. But it's nice. It's very, very solid where it is. There's a nice flat spot right here where I was able to put one bolt up from the bottom and then just put a nylock washer on it. It is not going anywhere, which I like. And so all I got to do now is connect up the power, and then the white is going to be my ground and the orange is going to be the trigger wire. All right, everything's looking pretty darn good. We've got the main power for all accessories. It's just gonna go right up through this little slot right here, attached to the battery. It's got a pretty easy access for the fuse right here, which is great. I've got a 7.5 amp fuse in there right now because it's just powering the USB port and also the GPS. And as you can see here, the white ground is gonna go over here and then come up and attach right here. And then the yellow relay trigger wire, sorry, the orange relay trigger wire is going over and going to attach to this little yellow wire for the rear tail light, so that'll only come on when the key is on. And I'm going to use a posi tap to do that, which is super clean way to tap into a line with no soldering or anything needed. So I'm going to get that done, and then basically the whole rear of the bike, other than reattaching the battery, is pretty much done. And then we just got to run a ground from the chassis ground right here. We're going to slide it into the same heat shrink on this guy, and then heat shrink this whole thing and the ground up into the tower. And that will be the power for all the accessories and any wiring on the bike from basically the forks back will be totally done. So that's pretty exciting. Getting close. All right, looking pretty good. And then there's the new power wire. It just kind of sneaks right behind this little guy right here. And I'm trying to think if I want to do a little bit of trimming. Yeah, I'm gonna trim a teeny bit off the edge of the airbox lid right here with the Dremel. Okay, and there you have it. Nice clean ground to the chassis right here. Goes up through, and then you can see where our new accessory power comes through right here, and they join together and they're shrink wrapped right up here, right into the tower. And then we've got power and ground right there. Okay, so the next steps are just hooking up this ground for the turn signal indicator, this ground for the kill switch to one of these distributed grounds here, and then run power and ground to the GPS switch and the USB switch, and then run grounds to those two accessories, get everything tightened up in here and get everything all bundled up and try to center things in the holes using some zip ties off these cross members here. But that's it. It's just clean up and then reinstall the seat, the tank, and then tighten up everything in the lights and tighten up everything in the windscreen. And that's it. And then we should have a ready bike. Okay. All the toggle wiring is done. Got those nice little shrink wrap connectors. The GPS lead side is done. Just need to connect it up to the actual mount and cradle. The USB port is done and the rings on the other side. Technically, if I connect the battery up, if I flick this switch on, we should get a voltmeter reading on this guy. So let's go ahead and try that out. Voltmeter's working great. But do you notice something about the switches? They're all down. So that means, what, I gotta flip all the switches? Nah, I mean, I guess it'll just be European. Up is off. So I guess that's off. All right. Yep, so that's off. And that's down. I guess that's not too bad, right? You can flip a toggle down. It's not a huge deal. I don't think there's, I think I believe, if I remember correctly, there is little, you know, slots in there the way each one of these switches go. So I don't think you can spin them around. Maybe you'd have to pull this little bracket and spin it around, but yeah, I guess we'll just leave them the way they are, and down is on and up is off. I mean, I guess if you're riding and you want to turn it on, going down is probably easier because you just kind of slap it. So that's good. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll take one of these apart and see if I can spin them around. Yeah, I just messed with them a bit. It looks like the switches are keyed right here, so you couldn't turn them around. So down is on, I guess. I'll just have to put a little reminder here. Off, on, with like an arrow in between or something like that. Do something with a label maker or something. But at least this is working. That's a good sign. We've got power and nothing's sparking or shorting out or smelling bad. So overall, other than down being on, I mean, I guess a kill switch, right? Kill switch down is on. So that's the way I'll think of it. Kill switch down is on. Accessories down is on, right? I don't know. We'll see. So as you can see here on this lead too, I just want to point out that I like double shrink wrapped this little guy because this one's going to kind of come through and rub on the metal right there and just kind of be a little pigtail that can be tapped into for the GPS. And before I start cleaning everything up in there, I guess make sure it runs, make sure everything, all the accessories work, and make sure the kill switch works and all like that. All right, wish me luck. Here goes nothing. Ah, so scary. Oh, we got fuel pump. We got dash. Let's do a kill switch. I don't see anything crackling or smoking. Let's pull that lever down. Oh, baby. Turn signal indicator. Does it work? Oh yeah. That's working. Turn signals are working and the indicator's grounded. That's good. That's working. Voltmeter still working. Headlights. Woo, that's bright. That's working. Let's see the high beam. Oh yeah. All right, so then theoretically, if we put this switch down when high beams are on, both should stay on. Oh man, that's awesome. That is so nice. Fucking A. I can't even tell you how bright that is, guys. That is super bright. All right, down is on. I can't tell if the dash is, I guess the dash is working because you don't know until you start rolling the front tire. So the last and only thing is whether this kill switch works. Oh my God. No wiring failures. That's nuts. Well, I guess I could still have screwed up the GPS power. That one's pretty straightforward, honestly. Well, I guess it's not because it's on the taillight triggered power, so I could have messed something up in there. So, okay, so let's get the GPS cradle wired up. I guess at this point too, I'll just assume that everything's, no, we'll get the GPS wired cradle up. GPS cradle wired up. There we go. Jesus. GPS cradle wired up and try out that and make sure it's getting power too. And then, I mean, everything else is working, and just clean up these wires and finish getting everything together. And that's it. Crazy. A little bit of shrink wrap, a join, and this quick connector. We have something that almost looks like a factory harness, huh? I mean, granted, this is a little bit weird stepwise. It's got these little bumps in it, but at least there's extra shrink wrap here in case there's any rubbing or wearing or anything like that. So here's our little powered pigtail. Here's a little end cap that's just basically another one of these plugs with some black silicone stuck in it. That would just clip right in there, and it's all waterproof. But let's grab our cradle, the old powered cradle. It's now got its own pigtail on it. We'll put it on as if we were going to be using a GPS. There we go, with the cradle down. Nice. That's solid. Sorry, the dash is still partially loose. Then I'm just going to run this around to the side here. Plug her in here. There we go. We got plenty of slack here in case you want to go vertical, right? In case you want to twist it and go vertical with the GPS like so. And we got a bunch of shrink wrap on here to prevent from wear. So let's push that guy forward. So now, if this switch is down, the bike is running, let's see what happens. So the Garmin 610 should come on, the Montana 610 should come on automatically when it senses power. So let's clip it in like so. There we go. It's a little dusty, sorry. We'll fire up the bike. Get power to everything. Alright, tail lights on. Moment of truth. Oh, yeah. Can you see that? Look at that. I can just adjust it for you too. Garmin is running. So this ram mount's really cool, right? Because you can twist it around any way you want and adjust for whether you're standing primarily or sitting primarily. But yeah, we're looking pretty good. Let's just see. There we go. Got a little charge icon. The cradle still works fully, right? There we go. You can almost just, and you pop it off right like that. There we go. You know, the cradles do have their own little security screw right here, but you know, somebody else can just take this off very easily. So wherever I go, I always just put this thing in my bag, take it off, put it in my backpack, whatever's on my body, and hope there's nothing too expensive in the back of the bike. But yeah, that is working. That's awesome. Sweet. Cool. So we've got accessory power. So that means that in the future, when I want to add heated grips, I'm just going to tap into the same power line for this guy, and I can throw some heated grips on this toggle. All right, this one is the toggle that doesn't work right now. It doesn't do anything. So I can just throw some heated grips on this toggle and easy breezy. All right, so I just took some extra time here to zip tie everything underneath the dash in the right way, make sure everything's solid. Everything's looking good in there now. I also adjusted the steering stops, got the seat back on, got the tank back on, got everything worked out there. So yeah, but I adjusted the steering stops too, so it would actually stop the forks. You can hear like a metal thud now versus a crunch of the wires on this side and a metal thud over here. So I just adjusted the steering stops out a little bit, so we did lose a little bit of range of motion in the front tire. I don't think it's going to be enough for me to notice too much unless I'm doing really tight switchback stuff on single track. But yeah, this is not a hard enduro bike. This is a, you know, trail slayer / adventure bike. So I think it's going to be fine for that. So last thing, let's just get this screen on, get these side covers on, and then she's good to go. Fresh bike, looking good. All right, just a reminder when you're working with the screen that any of the hardware that's going to be touching directly to the plastic of the screen has one of the nylon washers on it. That's really important to kind of keep the wear down on the screen itself. I think I might be short a couple nylon washers, so I'll probably go grab some from the hardware store, you know, a little bit down the road here. All right, I want to share one huge time-saving piece of advice for you guys. To get these bolts tightened, which they don't actually get fully tight. This one did, but this one actually kind of bottoms out on itself, which makes sense, right? Because it's just a little piece of plastic there. But to get those tight, you have to take off the dash. The dash has to be off because you have to be able to get a wrench up in there from in this space down here. So when you're doing this, definitely keep that in mind, because I just spent like 25 minutes flipping these around and all sorts of things to try to make them work, and it just didn't happen. But also I realized that my wonderful little spot for my GoPro power, or my Garmin GPS power, is actually really bad too, because you have to have this open here to be able to take the dash off with the windshield on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna have it stick out right here and pigtail it, or zip tie it right to there, and that'll be good too. That'll do the trick. As you can see, both the Vision X lights are basically flush with the windscreen, and obviously the big one on the bottom is sticking out a fair amount. But when I had them mounted before, when these cross members were mounted up and sitting, and the light was sitting on top of it, the light was so far back in the windscreen, it was almost like here, that it would actually be shooting a bunch of light into this plastic, and the whole edge of the fairing would almost light up. So I talked to the Nomad guys, and they told me how to rotate these cross members forward, which is unique to these Vision X lights. It's not, you don't have to do that in the Baja Squadrons lights or the other Vision X lights. It's just unique to these Vision X Dura lights. So you have to rotate the bottom one forward a little bit, and then you can see that the mounting arm is actually pointing forward. I don't know if you can see that on the top one. It's kind of, there you go. The mounting arm is actually pointing forward. That's how you get these guys to come forward and be the right way in the fairing. So I think they're pretty well set up now. I'm gonna go take a test drive now that it's 10 o'clock at night and see what these things do lighting up the road wise. All right, let's turn off the lights in here for some dramatic effect when it turns on. So right now it's low beam, and bike's off. Boom. That's just your low beam. There's your high beam. There's the combo. That's pretty darn bright. Oh yeah, I can already tell that the light up effect that I was getting before, where this whole edge was lighting up when those lights were tucked back, is definitely better. So let's see what it looks like out on the road. Alright, this new low beam. We're in a pretty lit up area, so I'm going to go out on the road here a little bit further, see what it looks like. There is still a little bit of light
around the fairing here, but before the whole edge was like almost bright. This is way better. Low beam.